The house was quieter now. The sounds that once filled the rooms, laughter, conversations, and the clinking of dishes, had all faded. The loss of Daniel, her husband of 25 years, left an emptiness that seemed impossible to fill. Olivia sat in the living room, staring at the family photos on the wall. She ran her fingers over the glass frames, touching the pictures of happier days. Daniel had always been the strong one, the one who knew how to fix everything, whether it was a broken appliance or a broken heart. Now he was gone. Her heart ached with every thought of him, and the house felt too big without him. But it was not just the absence of her husband that pained her. It was the sense of helplessness, the feeling that she could not protect herself from this wave of grief that hit her unexpectedly. The house was full of memories, but no matter how hard she tried to hold on to them, they seemed to slip through her fingers like sand. Mark, her son, had been different since his father passed away. He had always been close to his father. Their bond unspoken but strong. He was in his early 20s, still figuring out what he wanted from life. After the funeral, he had spent most of his time in his room, quietly dealing with the loss. Olivia understood. Losing Daniel had affected them both, but she was worried about Mark. He had always been the strong, silent type, but now he was more distant than ever. She tried to reach out to him, to offer comfort, but he often brushed her off. He wasn't as open as he used to be. At dinner, he would pick at his food, lost in thought. He seemed to be hiding something, but Olivia couldn't figure out what it was. She told herself that it was just his way of grieving. After all, everyone grieves differently. One evening, after a long day of sorting through Daniel's things, Olivia sat down on the couch, tired and emotionally drained. She hadn't realized how much of the day had passed until she noticed the clock. It was almost midnight. She stood up to turn off the lights when she heard footsteps behind her. "Mom, are you okay?" Mark's voice was soft, his tone concerned, but there was something else in his eyes, a distance that she hadn't noticed before. "I'm fine, Mark," she replied, offering him a small smile. "Just tired." Mark nodded but didn't leave. He lingered near the door, his eyes darting around the room as though looking for something to say. Finally he spoke. "I'm sorry about Dad," he said quietly. "I know you miss him. I miss him too." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "I'm here if you need to talk." Olivia smiled again, grateful for his words. Mark had always been there for her, even in the toughest of times. She reached out and hugged him, hoping that it would bring them closer, that it would remind them of the bond they shared. But as she pulled back, she noticed something. Mark's eyes were shadowed, with something deeper than sadness. There was a quiet strength in him that seemed forced, like he was carrying something that he didn't want to share. "I'm here too, Mark," she said softly, her heart aching. "I'm always here for you." For a moment, they stood in silence, just looking at each other. Then Mark nodded, gave her a quick smile, and walked away, disappearing down the hallway. Olivia stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. Her mind kept replaying the last few words he had said. They felt like a mask, like he was hiding something behind that quiet smile. The next few days passed in a blur. Olivia kept herself busy with the funeral arrangements, trying to keep her mind occupied so she wouldn't have to think too much about the void that Daniel had left. But at night, the silence of the house was deafening. She couldn't remember the last time she had slept through the night. Every little sound made her jump. Every corner of the house seemed empty without Daniel's presence. Mark had continued his retreat into his room, spending more time alone. He wasn't the type to talk about his feelings, and Olivia knew that. But she also knew that keeping things bottled up could lead to bigger problems down the road. One evening, as she was sitting in the kitchen, sipping on her tea, Olivia heard the sound of Mark's footsteps coming from the stairs. She looked up, half expecting him to ask her something or offer to help with dinner. But when he walked into the kitchen, he seemed distracted. His eyes were glued to his phone, and he barely acknowledged her presence. "Mark," Olivia said, softly, her voice filled with concern. "Is everything okay?" Mark glanced up quickly, startled by her voice. He quickly pocketed his phone and smiled awkwardly. "Yeah, everything's fine, Mom," he replied, his voice lacking its usual warmth. Just thinking." Olivia studied him carefully, sensing that there was something more to his behavior than he was letting on. But she didn't press him. Instead, she nodded and let it go. She had learned over the years that sometimes people needed their space to heal. But as she continued to watch him from the corner of her eye, a feeling of unease settled in her chest. Something had changed. She couldn't put her finger on it, but it was there. It was in the way Mark avoided her gaze, the way he retreated into his room at night, and the way he seemed to carry a weight on his shoulders that he wasn't sharing. As she finished her tea and started cleaning up the kitchen, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The distance between her and Mark had always been there, but it was growing now. She told herself it was just the grief. But deep down, she feared that there was something more. She sighed, looking out the window at the dark sky. She didn't know what the future held, but she had to believe that things would get better. She had to believe that somehow they would both find their way through this storm. As the days passed, Olivia found herself stuck in a routine that no longer felt normal. The house, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a place where memories haunted every corner. She spent her days dealing with paperwork, cleaning up and sorting through Daniel's belongings. The grief of losing her husband was still fresh, but there was a new feeling stirring in her heart. Concern for Mark. She had tried to keep busy, hoping the time would heal the wound left by Daniel's passing, but something felt off. Mark, her son, had always been the quiet one, but lately he had been even more withdrawn. His behavior was becoming more strange, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. It started with little things. He would spend hours locked away in his room, his phone always in his hand. He used to be more open, even if he didn't always share his emotions. But now, he barely spoke to her. When he did, his words were short and clipped. When she asked how he was feeling, he gave a polite but distant response. "I'm fine, Mom," but Olivia knew better. She could tell something was wrong. The worst part was how secretive he had become. The phone was always in his hand, and he was always on it, even at dinner. Olivia had asked him several times if he wanted to talk, but he just brushed it off, saying he was busy. She tried to respect his privacy, understanding that he needed time to grieve, but the way he acted was starting to make her nervous. One afternoon, while Olivia was cleaning the living room, she heard a strange sound. It came from Mark's room. The door was slightly ajar, and Olivia had walked past it many times without thinking much of it. But today, something felt different. She stopped and leaned in, listening carefully. Mark's voice was muffled, but she could hear him talking to someone. Olivia's curiosity got the best of her, and she gently pushed the door open. She froze when she saw Mark sitting on the edge of his bed, his phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking softly, his tone different from the way he usually spoke to her. "No, I told you we need to keep this quiet. Mom can't know," Mark said, his voice low and hurried. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what to think. She stepped back, trying not to make a sound, her mind racing. Was he talking about something personal? Or was this something darker? Something she didn't understand? Her thoughts swirled with doubt, but she didn't push the door any further. She had heard enough. Mark's words echoed in her head as she retreated down the hallway. The uneasy feeling she had been trying to ignore now felt like a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. The next day, Olivia noticed Mark acting even more distant. He barely looked her in the eye when he passed her in the hallway. And when she tried to engage in conversation, he quickly excused himself, saying he had plans. But Olivia could tell he was avoiding her. He was slipping away, and she didn't know why. She began to question herself. Was she being too paranoid? Maybe she was just imagining things. But no matter how much she tried to dismiss her worries, the feeling wouldn't go away. She remembered how close she and Mark had been when he was younger. He had always confided in her, shared his dreams and even his troubles. But now there was a wall between them, and Olivia couldn't break it down. She decided to keep a closer eye on him, hoping to catch him in a moment of honesty. One evening after dinner, Olivia noticed Mark retreating to his room again. She followed him quietly, watching from the hallway as he locked the door behind him. She felt her heart tighten, with the realization that she had no idea what was going on inside his head. A few hours later, after the house had fallen into silence, Olivia found herself standing at the foot of Mark's door. She had tried to resist the urge to confront him, but the fear of what he was hiding had consumed her. She took a deep breath and knocked softly. There was a pause before Mark's voice called out, "Yeah, Mom? What is it?" I wanted to talk," Olivia said, her voice trembling slightly. She wasn't sure what she was going to say, but she knew she needed to understand. "Can I come in?" There was another pause before Mark replied, "Not right now, Mom. I'm kind of busy." Olivia's heart sank. She could hear the discomfort in his voice, the way he was avoiding her. She had to do something. She couldn't just stand by and let this strange behavior continue without knowing what was going on. "I'm just worried about you, Mark," she said, her voice softer now. "We've been through a lot. I want us to be able to talk to each other, to be there for one another." Mark's voice softened, but there was a hint of frustration. "I know, Mom, I just need some space, okay?" Olivia stood there for a moment, her mind racing with thoughts. She wanted to push him, to demand answers, but she knew that wouldn't help. Instead, she stepped away from the door, feeling defeated. It was clear that Mark was shutting her out, and she didn't know how to break through the wall he had built around himself. As the days went on, Olivia's worry grew. She couldn't ignore the strange feeling that something wasn't right. Mark's secretive behavior continued, and she began to notice other things too. He had become more irritable, snapping at her when she asked simple questions. He was losing weight, barely eating at meals, and often staying up late into the night. Olivia tried to talk to him again, but every attempt seemed to fall flat. She was starting to wonder if her son had changed in ways she couldn't understand. Was it just the grief from losing his father, or was there something more going on? One night, as Olivia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she realized that she couldn't ignore her suspicions any longer. She had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She couldn't sit back and watch Mark slip away, lost in a world that she didn't understand. The next morning, she made a decision. She would do whatever it took to uncover the truth. Olivia was determined to get to the bottom of what was really happening with her son, even if it meant facing a truth she wasn't ready to hear. Olivia had never imagined that things could get worse. She had always known that grief could change a person, but she never expected it to pull her son away from her in such a distant, cold way. As the days turned into weeks, the silence between them grew louder. Mark, who used to be so open and close to her, had become a stranger in their own home. But despite her worries, Olivia tried to keep her focus on the house. She had to maintain some sense of normalcy for herself, and especially for Mark. She continued with her daily routines, but the weight of uncertainty never left her. She didn't know how to reach her son anymore. She didn't know what to say or do. One Thursday afternoon, Olivia sat in the living room folding laundry. She had turned on the TV for some background noise, but she couldn't focus on it. Her mind was consumed with thoughts of Mark. She had been debating whether to confront him again, but every time she tried, he shut her down. The frustration was building inside her. She just wanted him to open up, to let her in. Just as she finished folding a shirt, she heard the sound of Mark's voice. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to catch her attention. He was in the kitchen, talking to someone. Olivia froze. She hadn't expected him to be talking to anyone, not since he had become so distant. The tone of his voice was different too. He sounded urgent, almost anxious. Without thinking, she stood up and quietly made her way to the kitchen. She peeked around the corner and froze when she saw who Mark was talking to. It wasn't just a friend or someone she didn't know. It was the woman from their past, the one who had been a close family friend, the one who had known Daniel before. He passed away. Olivia's heart sank. The woman, whose name was Sarah, had been around for years, always so polite and kind. But now she was standing too close to Mark, her hand on his arm, whispering something that Olivia couldn't hear. The sight of them together, so familiar yet so wrong, made Olivia's stomach twist. For a moment, Olivia just stood there watching them. She couldn't understand what was happening. She knew Mark had been spending more time with Sarah lately, but she never thought it was anything beyond the comfort of grief. She never imagined that Mark would turn to Sarah, of all people, in such an intimate way. It didn't make sense. Finally, Mark turned his head, catching Olivia's eye. His face turned pale, and for the briefest moment, Olivia saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Sarah, however, didn't seem as surprised. She just smiled as if she had known Olivia was standing there the whole time. "Mom," Mark said, his voice uneasy. "What are you doing here?" Olivia's mind raced, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all she could do was stare at the two of them. "I heard you talking," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "What's going on, Mark?" Mark hesitated, looking over at Sarah, who gave him a reassuring nod. Sarah seemed so calm, almost like she was waiting for this moment to happen. Olivia could feel the walls closing in around her. Everything she had suspected, everything she had feared was coming true. "Mom," Mark started again, taking a deep breath. "I didn't want you to find out like this, but I've been seeing Sarah for a while now. It's not what you think, though." The words hit Olivia like a punch to the gut. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She had trusted Mark, believed that they would get through this together, and now she felt like the ground beneath her was crumbling. "You're seeing Sarah?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't understand it. How could he do this? How could he turn to Sarah, someone who had known their family so well, someone who had been close to Daniel? Mark lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. After Dad died, I didn't know what to do. Sarah, she was there for me. She understood. And over time, we just got closer. I never meant to hurt you, Mom." Olivia's chest tightened as the tears she had been holding back began to form in her eyes. She felt betrayed, lost. It wasn't just the fact that Mark was seeing Sarah. It was the way he had kept it from her, the way he had shut her out when she needed him the most. "I don't understand," Olivia said softly, her voice breaking. "You're my son. You were supposed to talk to me, to let me in. And now you're with her." Sarah took a step forward, her presence overwhelming in the small kitchen. "Olivia, please. Try to understand. I never meant for this to happen. But Mark and we just found each other in a way that neither of us expected." Olivia felt a wave of nausea. The words sounded too rehearsed, too practiced. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to accept that her son, her flesh and blood, had turned to someone else, someone who had been a part of their lives for so long. "I don't know what to say to you, Mark," Olivia whispered, shaking her head. "I don't know how to process this." Mark looked up at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Mom, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought you would understand. I thought you'd see that I was struggling too." Olivia took a step back, her emotions swirling inside her. She felt betrayed, heartbroken, and confused. She didn't know how to react, how to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't just about her losing Daniel. It was about losing her son in a way she never expected. She didn't know how to repair the bond that had been broken. "I need some time to think," Olivia said quietly, turning away. She didn't want to see their faces anymore. She didn't want to hear their excuses. She needed space. She needed to understand what had gone wrong. As she left the kitchen, the sound of Mark's voice calling her name faded behind her. Olivia closed the door to her room, her heart heavy with sorrow. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She didn't know where to go from here. All she knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. Olivia had spent the rest of the afternoon alone in her room, trying to process the conversation she had just had with Mark and Sarah. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in on her. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. How had things gotten so complicated? How had she lost her son to someone who had always been a family friend, someone she trusted? The room felt suffocating, and Olivia needed air. She stepped outside into the cool evening, hoping that the fresh air would clear her mind. The garden was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart, but the weight of the situation still pressed heavily on her chest. Mark and Sarah, the two people she never thought would hurt her. And yet, here they were, the source of so much pain. Olivia had always tried to be a good mother, always there for Mark through every struggle, every success, every heartbreak. But this was something she hadn't prepared for. It felt like a betrayal she couldn't undo. Hours passed, and, as the evening grew darker, Olivia found herself standing at Mark's door. She had told herself that she needed time, that she needed to think things through before confronting him. But the more she thought, the more she realized that silence wasn't going to fix anything. She couldn't let this go without understanding why Mark had done what he had. With a steady hand, she knocked gently on the door. "Mark," she called, her voice low but firm. "We need to talk." There was no answer at first. Olivia's heart sank. But she stood there waiting. After what seemed like an eternity, Mark's voice came from inside the room. "I don't want to talk right now, Mom," he said quietly, but Olivia could hear the tremor in his voice. It was the first time in weeks that he had sounded anything less than distant. "I know you're upset," Olivia said, her voice softening. "I'm upset too, Mark. But we need to talk about this. We can't keep pretending everything is okay." Mark didn't respond immediately, but Olivia could hear him shifting on the other side of the door. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She had to be strong for both of them, even if she didn't feel strong herself. "Please, Mark, I'm not angry at you. I need to understand. I don't understand why you did this." A long pause followed before the door creaked open and Mark stepped into the hallway. His eyes were red as though he had been crying, but he was trying hard to hide it behind a wall of emotionless calm. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom," Mark said, his voice cracking slightly. I didn't know what else to do. After Dad passed, I was lost. I didn't know how to deal with it. Sarah, she was there for me. She understood the way no one else did. I didn't mean for it to turn into what it did." Olivia listened carefully, her heart aching for the son she had raised, for the man who seemed so broken in front of her. She wanted to reach out and hug him, to make everything better, but she knew this wasn't something that could be fixed with just a hug. This was something deeper, something that ran much further than just grief. "Mark," Olivia began, her voice trembling, "I understand that you're hurting. I understand that losing your father was hard on you. But I don't understand why you turned to Sarah. She's someone we've known for so long. She was a part of our family. And you've kept this from me. For weeks." Mark's gaze dropped to the floor, and he seemed to shrink under the weight of his mother's words. He opened his mouth to speak, but then stopped as though searching for the right words. "I didn't want to lose you, Mom," he said quietly. "I thought if I kept it a secret, maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't want you to think I was doing something wrong." Olivia's heart broke at his words. She had spent years trying to protect him from pain, trying to be the one constant in his life. And now it seemed that he had been protecting himself from her, hiding his grief, his confusion, behind a wall of secrecy. "Mark, you don't have to protect me," Olivia said softly, her voice full of emotion. "You don't have to hide anything from me. I'm your mother. I'm here for you no matter what. You don't have to go through this alone." Mark looked up, his eyes full of uncertainty. He opened his mouth to say something, but his voice faltered. I didn't know what to do," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I was lost. I still am." Olivia took a step forward, her heart swelling with both sorrow and love. She reached out and placed her hand gently on his shoulder, offering him the comfort he so desperately needed. "I know you are," she said softly. "But you don't have to figure everything out by yourself. I'm here, Mark. I always will be. You're my son. Nothing will ever change that." For a moment there was silence between them, and Olivia could see the tears welling up in Mark's eyes. He finally let them fall, his shoulders shaking as he allowed himself to break down. Olivia pulled him into a tight hug, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Mark didn't pull away. He let his mother hold him, just as she had when he was a child, just as she had done through all the trials and losses they had faced together. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "I never meant to hurt you." Olivia held him tighter, her own tears falling freely. "It's okay, Mark. It's okay. We'll get through this together." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, both of them trying to find their way through the pain. Olivia knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges and heartache. But at that moment, she also knew that they could face it together. Mark had made a mistake, but he was still her son. And nothing, not grief, not secrets, not even Sarah, could change the love she had for him. And slowly, as the night grew deeper, Olivia realized that this was just the beginning of their healing. The road ahead might be long and uncertain, but for the first time in weeks she believed that they would be okay. The days after the confrontation were filled with tension, but also a sense of quiet understanding. Mark and Olivia had talked openly for the first time in weeks, and while the pain of the situation still lingered, they both felt like a weight had been lifted. The air in the house no longer felt as suffocating, but it was clear that things had changed. They were both learning how to navigate a new normal. Olivia couldn't help but feel conflicted. She wanted to be angry, to hold Mark accountable for what he had done, but she also understood the confusion and grief he had been going through. The loss of Daniel had affected them both, and she realized that they had been mourning in different ways. Mark had found comfort in Sarah, someone he felt understood his pain even though it had ultimately caused more hurt than healing. For Olivia, forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She couldn't keep holding on to the bitterness and anger. If she wanted to rebuild her relationship with her son, she needed to let go of the hurt, at least for now. She needed to focus on moving forward, on healing. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, the silence between them wasn't as heavy as it had been. It was still awkward, but not as suffocating. Olivia looked at Mark across the table, her heart aching with both love and concern. He had been quieter than usual since their conversation, but she could see that he was trying. "Mark," she said softly, breaking the silence. "How are you feeling?" Mark looked up from his plate, meeting her gaze for the first time that evening. His eyes were still tired, still filled with the remnants of grief, but there was something different in them now, something softer. "I don't know, Mom," he admitted. "It's been hard, really hard. I don't think I've ever felt this lost before." He paused, his voice faltering. "I was just trying to find a way to deal with it. I thought I could hide it, that maybe I could bury the pain, but it only made everything worse." Olivia nodded, her heart going out to him. She knew what it was like to feel lost, to be overwhelmed by grief. She had spent so many nights trying to understand how to move on without Daniel. But now she realized that they both needed to find a way to heal together. "You don't have to hide anything from me, Mark," Olivia said, her voice gentle but firm. "You never have to face anything alone. I'm here for you no matter what." Mark nodded slowly, his eyes filled with emotion. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I never meant to push you away. I just didn't know how to handle everything." The conversation felt like a small step forward, but Olivia could feel the shift. Mark was opening up to her again, and that meant more to her than anything. It wasn't going to be easy, but they were slowly finding their way back to each other. Over the next few weeks, things started to feel a little less broken. Mark still spent a lot of time in his room, but there were moments when he came out, when he sat with Olivia in the living room, talking about the things he enjoyed. They would watch old movies together, laugh at silly things, and share memories of Daniel. It wasn't the same as before, but it was a start. One afternoon, Mark came downstairs holding a small box. He sat down next to Olivia, his hands trembling slightly. "Mom," he began, "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realize I need to make things right, so I got you something." Olivia looked at him curiously, her heart swelling with both love and anticipation. She opened the box to find a small, delicate necklace inside. It was simple, but it was beautiful. A silver pendant shaped like a heart, with a tiny engraving on it. "What's this?" she asked, her voice soft. Mark looked at her, his expression serious but vulnerable. "It's for you, Mom. To remind you that I'm still here, that we can still be close. I know I made mistakes, but I want to do better. I want to make up for the time I lost." Olivia blinked back tears as she reached out to take the necklace. It was such a small gesture, but it meant everything to her. She had spent so much time feeling lost and alone, but now she realized that they both had the chance to rebuild what had been broken. "Thank you, Mark," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This means more than you know." Mark gave her a small, unsure smile, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. It was the first time in a long time that she saw him truly trying to make things right, to reach out to her. As the weeks went by, Olivia and Mark continued to work through their pain step by step. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of silence, moments of uncertainty, but they were moving forward. The bond between them wasn't broken, it had just been shaken. And that, Olivia realized, was enough. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Mark turned to her and spoke softly. "Mom, I think I'm starting to understand something," he said. "Losing Dad, it's not something I'll ever get over, but I don't have to carry it by myself, and neither do you." Olivia smiled, her heart lifting at his words. "We're in this together, Mark. Always." For the first time in months, Olivia felt a sense of peace. She knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time, she truly believed they could face them together. They had both been through a lot, but they had come out stronger. They were healing, and that was enough for now. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Olivia and Mark sat together in comfortable silence, knowing that no matter what the future held, they would always have each other.